I'm Ellen Brown, president of the Rotary Club of Harrisburg. We're part of an international community and humanitarian service organization comprised of 1.4 million members in over 44,000 clubs in more than 200 countries. Rotary leads the world in volunteer service. For more than 112 years, the Rotary Club of Harrisburg has organized impactful local service projects that changes lives and creates hope where it's needed most. Please join us at a Rotary luncheon at the Hilton, service on a Monday, or a Rotary alternate meeting to meet our members who are waiting to welcome you. You can find out more about us at hbgrotary.org. Please like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We hope to welcome you as a member soon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm pleased to introduce today newly elected Dauphin County Commissioner Justin Douglas. I had a chance to meet Commissioner Douglas when he was candidate Douglas on the campaign trail. And despite recognizing an incredible taste in sneakers, he's an Air Jordan guy. I'm an Air Force One guy, so I wore them today. But both Nike family, so we agree on that. I noticed early on that Justin had certainly moral clarity and a distinct concept and idea of what he wanted to accomplish when he was commissioner. And since being elected, he's joined our board of directors at Critic, and I've noticed that carry on, but he has an incredible ability to balance that clarity with a desire to learn more. And almost any time we've asked him to do something, he asks for as much information as possible, which is all you can ask for in a public servant, and certainly a newly elected one as well. I'm going to allow him to go through a little bit of his background, but you'll find it, I think, as interesting as I have. So without further ado, Commissioner Justin Douglas.
Well, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here. It's an honor, actually, to be here with local area leaders and to share a little bit today. Just to start, my name is Justin. I'm a husband, a father, 3 kids. I have a high schooler, elementary, and middle schooler, so you can pray for me. We've got all 3 bases covered. So that's interesting. My career was in pastoring, so I'm a pastor. I'm also a CrossFit coach, musician, and recently elected county commissioner. When I thought about what I would come share with you, I thought, if I was a leader in the room, what are some things, I might want to hear? And certainly I want you to get familiar with me and a little bit of my story, but I wanted to maybe share 3 principles I learned this last year that I'll be applying to my life moving forward. And you can take them or leave them, but there are 3 things that kind of ultimately brought me to where I am today and that I've seen the value of over the past year. The first principle is to embrace unconventional ideas. Embrace unconventional ideas. If you know how I decided to run for county commissioner, it's very unconventional. There's an organization called Run for Something that mobilizes younger individuals to get into local politics. And I was at my gym one day. I had just finished coaching a class, and I was in the office during an open gym time slot, and my phone rang. And for some reason, an unknown number that looked very much like a telemarketer, I decided to answer it. And on the other end, it was Run for Something. And after about a 5-minute phone call with them, they said, "We think you'd be great to run for county commissioner of Dauphin County." And I said, "I've never done anything in politics before. That seems like a pretty major leap." And they're like, "We think you could do it." And at that time, I was like, not going to happen. But I took time to think about it. I took time to embrace this unconventional idea that maybe this could be a place where I could affect some changes that I had already been passionate about throughout my career as a pastor and even just as a community leader. And so when we are faced with often a crossroads of embracing unconventional ideas, it may not be right. There's plenty of unconventional ideas that I'm approached with now in this role that I'm like, I don't know. But what I will say is, as you're approached with unconventional ideas, maybe take time to listen, take time to consider, take time to be patient instead of saying no right away. There can be a lot of value, and you don't have a clue what doors might open as you embrace unconventional ideas. I know for me, had I not answered that phone call, or had I not given it the value that it was and the consideration, I wouldn't be standing before you today. The second thing is to stay true to yourself. This is something we're told even as kids. My kids are told it even at school. Be true to who you are, all that stuff. But you know who you are. You know what your values are. You know what you stand for. I'm obviously not your typical politician as I stand up here. Like, this isn't what you would build in a lab to be a politician, right? I love sneakers, as Ryan said. I'm trying to start the Air Jordan caucus, working on that. So if you have any ins there, let me know. But also, my background isn't the background that would necessarily be in this role. But at the same time, I think sometimes the things that we see as our authentic self and the limitations that they might bring might actually be the superpower that allows us to stand out and be different because we're authentic. People are striving for authentic leadership way more than they are polished leadership. You can be as polished as you want to be. You can go to every single class that gets you to stop saying in a speech. And that might be good for you. I'm not saying it's a waste of time, but people just want to know that when they're talking to you, they're talking to the real thing. And as a leader in whatever industry you're in, there's so much value in staying true to yourself, being your authentic self. And finally, the point that I'm going to say is to put in the effort. We put in a lot of work, obviously, on the campaign, and now I'm putting in a lot of effort as a county commissioner. And I say effort because I want to make it clear what I'm saying. Effort is a choice. The results will always change, but effort is a choice. You don't get to control often the results in your field of influence, but you do get to control how much effort you put in to the work. For example, you can make the choice to show up, to go the extra mile, to gain the competency, to ask for information. You can forge the relationships. You can put in the work. You can put in the effort, and you might still fail. And one of the things I've learned in life is that I usually learn a lot when I put a lot of effort in and I fail. There's usually a lot I learn in that process. And what I'm committed to in this role is not failing. I'm probably going to fail as a county commissioner more than once. I would actually anticipate it. But what I'm committed to is to putting in the effort. And I've seen the value of a life that puts in the effort. I grew up on a farm in Indiana, not the county, the state. And my dad was a very hard worker, worked in a factory, worked 12.5-hour shifts. I ended up working in that same factory in college when I would come back for the summers. But my dad taught me hard work, taught me the principle of putting in the effort. And on Saturdays, when my dad would wake me up early and hand me my boots right out of bed, I knew it was going to be a very tough day. And one day we had been talking a lot about the idea of building a new fence around our pasture. We were on a sheep farm. That's where I grew up. And he handed me a shovel, and he had spray painted off a 4x4 box. And he said, it needs to be 4 feet deep. We're putting a corner post here. By the way, we needed to put like 6 corner posts up. Okay. And if you've ever shoveled a 4x4 by 4 foot deep hole, let me tell you, it's not glamorous and it takes a lot of time. And so I started shoveling. Hours went by, barely made any progress. I hated my dad just when he handed me my boots. And at this point, I was probably actively as a teenager cursing my dad with each shovel. My dad later that day came around with a backhoe and shoveled all of them. And I hated my dad even more. And I share that story because for some of us, like, as a teenager, I didn't understand what my dad was trying to teach me, except just trying to frustrate me or a constant April Fool's joke. But there was always hard work to do on the farm. There was always a challenge set before us. As we embrace the challenges that we have and we give it our full effort, we develop this perseverance muscle that we can apply to the challenging things that come before us. And as a leader, you know how many challenging things come across your desk every day. And the more and more you can develop that perseverance through the hard effort that you put into the people you're entrusted with leading, the challenges you're entrusted with trying to solve, all the elements of leadership that you get to place your energies toward, I've found that every time I pick up that shovel, it gets a little easier to dig the hole if I commit really hard to the effort. Some of the efforts that I'm putting my energies toward these days is my oversights. I just want to share with you some of the things that I oversee as county commissioner. If you don't know, we have 3 county commissioners, and we divvy up all the different departments. And here's some of the departments that I have oversight in leading and guiding. Affordable housing. It's no secret that we need affordable housing, more of it throughout the county, but certainly where we have affordable housing and public housing, ensuring that those systems run properly. And so I've actually gone through a walkthrough of some of our different developments that have public housing individuals there and met with them. I'm also oversight of conservation district. I think, ultimately creating a greener world is better for everyone. And so for me, the environment's very important. As was said by Ryan earlier, CREDIC is something that I get the privilege of sitting on and thinking through the economic development of our region and how we can continue to invest in that. Domestic relations, as we think about the domestic relations of our region, and certainly those individuals who are maybe in need of child support and things like that, that gets a lot of calls into my office. We're very interested in constituent concerns. So when a constituent calls our office, they are contacted back within 24 hours or less. If they have a constituent concern, that would be one of the things that on affordable housing we get a lot of calls for. I'm also oversight of the prison, and certainly that's another area where we get a lot of constituent concerns. If you don't know anything about my campaign, I ran primarily on prison reform, which is another thing when you think about unconventional ideas. I had a lot of people in my ear saying, if you run on the prison, you will not get elected. And I said, we'll see. And here we are. And so I say that just to say it's becoming very clear that our community sees the challenges that exist in our prison, that ultimately it is an issue that voters care about, that people do care about human rights, and people do care about transparency in our systems. And so I'm trying to bring some of that into that space. And ultimately, we've already seen some changes that I'm proud of. For the last few years, they've been talking about the idea of a town hall meeting. If you don't know, our prison board meetings happen at 1:30 during the week, not necessarily an accessible time if you're a working mom and you have a child that's at the prison and you want to know about things. So we're creating town halls quarterly that'll happen in the evenings at accessible locations and times. And there's multiple other changes that are in the works, and I'm excited to be leading in that way. I also oversee the library, Dauphin County Library System. Really excited about some of the great things that are happening in our library. We got to appoint board members, and I was very excited to appoint Tilak Naralu, who's from the Bhutanese Nepali community, onto our library board. As we have a large Bhutanese Nepali community in this area, and seeing the library system as a way of ultimately helping them with English as a second language. There's so much interaction and collaboration that we have opportunities for as we think about some of the challenges that community is facing. I also oversee public defenders. So as we think about the criminal justice system and people's right to be represented, our public defender's office is doing great things. At the same time, public defenders are always challenged. These are the lawyers who take the pay cut to do the thing and help the community, and they can always use more. And so thinking about how we can recruit well, how we can retain the ones that we've recruited, and ultimately how we can represent our constituents well. Finally, I want to talk about something that I think from an economic development perspective will have a big impact in this area, and maybe in your particular area of industry could be impacting, which is that I oversee CAT, or rabbit transit. And part of that is that I had the honor last month of going to Washington, D.C. and meeting with Senator Fetterman and Senator Casey's staff to talk about the idea of the potential for some grant monies to come back to Dauphin County. So some monies to be secured coming back to Dauphin County for investment in that infrastructure. If you don't know, we have a trolley barn that was built in 1904 that is currently the transfer station. We are in need of a massive upgrade there, and it's over $100 million project. And we're really excited about the opportunity that this could bring, not just to our county, but it's actually has an 11 county impact, our transportation here. But I want you to think about this. The single mom here in Harrisburg who maybe wants to rely on public transit can have a really challenge relying on it because our public transit isn't the type that necessarily you could say, I'm not going to have a car because I'm going to rely on this. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I used to live in Boston and I also lived in DC. And when I lived there, it was, the transit system was something you could rely on. And the idea that Harrisburg could have a transit system it relies on and that people can organize their life around would be amazing. So a single mom has to take their child to daycare, drops her child off at daycare, and then might wait 55 minutes after dropping them off for the next bus to come. That's not feasible. And then when they go pick up their child, they got to take the bus after work back to there, pick up their child, wait another 55 minutes for the next bus to come. If we can have buses run in a way that ultimately where people can rely on that transit and maybe choose not to have the overhead of a car payment, overhead of the gas, overhead of the insurance. And also potentially one of my dreams would be to see a grocery store come to Harrisburg to where people don't have to travel outside to go get groceries. So there's a lot of really cool ideas that I think others have that I'm excited to come alongside and co-sign on. But this increase in transportation is going to be something that regionally is going to have, I believe, a massive impact if we're able to get that. That's something I was excited to talk to the senator's staff, both senators' staff about, and excited to see what the result of that will be. But from here, I'm willing to take any questions. I believe it's time for questions, but just want to say really quick, again, thanks for having me. And if there's ever anything in your particular lane that you need from the commissioner's office, please don't hesitate to reach out. But yeah, I would love to answer any questions related to this or something else.
I'm glad to hear, Justin, that you're involved with mass transit and that there's a possibility of additional funding. The regionalization is coming or it is underway, and that's a great thing. A number of years ago, when I was on the Capital Area Transit Board, we had an initiative to reinstate regional rail between Harrisburg and Carlisle. And Harrisburg, of course, there already is rail in the eastern direction towards Lancaster. But your counterparts across the river, the Cumberland County Commissioners, killed that off just as it was about to be federally funded. Is there any chance that we could get that back on track?
I have not heard any talks of that, but that would be something that I would love to see the data on that and like what that would provide from a, from the perspective of what opportunities would be enhanced through something like that. And I would want to collaborate with our Cumberland County partners. One of the things I think is interesting in this field is like bringing all the stakeholders to the table at the genesis of the idea really helps get buy-in. Oftentimes, I think when you bring people to the table after a decision's been made, they don't feel like they were a part of it. And so I don't know if that's what happened and transpired in the past or if there were other reasons. But I would simply say if that's something we were going to consider, I just want to get all the stakeholders at the table. I'd want to talk to Rich at CAT and see how that integrates with the current plan. But I think, let me say it this way, as we enter into this, new phase, the new generation that's coming up, I think in any investment in transportation and public transportation I think it's going to be really good for this area. The easier you can make it for people to connect and get around in this area, I think the more we're going to see investment from businesses and industry in this area. So I'd love to, if there's a study on that was done back in the past, please send it my way. Yep.
Thanks for speaking with us today. I imagine you've been spending most of your time listening.
Yeah, 100%.
As you hit the ground. Can you share with us maybe one or two of your biggest surprises? Maybe the things that caused you to think, what have I done? But also,
how honest do you want?
Yeah, that's entirely up to you. But what have been some of the big surprises as you've learned?
All right, I'll give you two big surprises. One, how much we're concerned with liability. I'm just going to be honest. It's just constant. It's like, one of the challenges I have is that transparency is something I ran on and learning that there's some challenges in how transparent you can be. and trying to still show up when you can't have every answer to every question, or you have information that can't yet be public, or maybe can't be public. And so there's some real challenges for how you operate in that space. For example, we've had prisoner deaths that have been a real challenge, and those are open investigations. You know, we don't have the information right now. But when a community is mourning a death of somebody, it's really challenging to enter into that space with no answers, because you feel like answers might provide some relief. But at the same time, the last thing you want to do is provide some details that might change as the investigation continues. And so there's some things that I think on this side I've learned about that whole process, and I'm still trying to understand how we can enhance our transparency without compromising liability. And so that's something that I think I've learned. We have to be, as much as I think I saw it as like, this is a layup, we just need to do this, it's a little more complicated is what I guess I would say. The second thing is just how demanding this job is. And I mean that from a standpoint of like, I think part of it is I didn't come through the typical, I kind of came in through the back door. I'm not necessarily the path that you would take to county commissioner. So a lot of people don't have forged relationships with me and want forged relationships with me, and so want to meet with me. But that's kind of been the other challenge, is just the demand on my time. I had a pretty amazing opportunity on my second day. This is a fun story, so I'll just share it. But it kind of just goes to the demand on my time, and just like connections with different people. If you don't know, like Dauphin County flipped blue for the first time, I think that the stats say since the Civil War. So this is like a pretty big deal. So the second day I'm driving into the office, get a phone call from the Biden administration asking if I'd be willing to open for him the next day, give a speech for him the next day at Valley Forge. Not something a county commissioner does, certainly not something I have any reason to be a part of, but I did it, and it was, you know, pretty amazing. And then that kind of also snowballed into more people, I think, being aware. And there's just that challenge of like, this is a very different role than the role I've typically been in. And so learning to say no, or say, we're gonna have to push that meeting to May or June, because right now I'm also focused on my oversights, and I'm focused on trying to get things done. And part of my oversights and getting things done also means there's 50-page reports I have to read, and I have to summarize, and I have to try to figure out how I'm going to act on that information. You can't do that when you're in meetings for 8 hours a day, which sometimes that's my day. So I'm learning how to manage that. And that's still kind of a moving target between me and my executive assistant figuring that out. But does that help? Does that answer questions? Yeah. Yeah, of course. Peggy. That's a good question. She asked if I'm still in my pastor's position. So I was a full-time pastor, and well, I was split. I did pastoral work and CrossFit coaching. I'm no longer a CrossFit coach, but I founded our church, the Belong Collective, which meets in Midtown. And I'm going to maintain what we're going to call founding pastor status, and I'll preach once a month and have a little bit of a leadership role when needed. But we're in the process of trying to hire somebody to be, the more full-time pastor, and I won't receive any pay from the church. It's just going to be as founding status. Yeah. Peggy's got a follow-up.
About that is because both of those positions are very demanding.
Yes.
And on your time, and especially the personal human factor and all of it. You want your doors to be open in both cases, and it's really hard.
It is. And I'll give an example of that. An amazing member of our church community at 99 and a half years old passed away last week. And, I did the graveside service, and I'll be doing the celebration of life later. And that's something that, having had a relationship with that person for going on 9 years, as, connected to our family, but also connected to our church family. And those demands and those relationships still definitely have weight. And so that's something that I would want to be a part of, but also in the midst of everything going on, that certainly creates some demands and challenges. So you're right, Peggy, which, by the way, last week I visited out there at the Veterans Grove, the tiny homes. They're amazing. They're coming along. Yeah. If you don't know about that's a great project. Thanks for your investment in that, Peggy. All right. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
As a ex-CrossFitter, what was your reason of exit? Was it just gravity, which was kind of my problem? Or was it?
Gravity's
something
always
else?
been my problem. Uh, no. So I'm still technically a licensed coach. Like I could coach a class. I'm trying to figure out how, this is very nuts and bolts, but, I worked out and coached at CrossFit Hershey. And from where I live in Conewago Township, and it's about 20 minutes the opposite direction as Harrisburg, where the gym is. And so it adds about 40 minutes to my day, which is, I was already expressing my time constraints. It's not really functional. So trying to find a gym locally, probably around here that I can work out at. And then on weekends, I'll probably work out with my buddies at that gym. But coaching was I really loved coaching. It was, one of the things Peggy talked about with people is like, I think one of the perspectives I bring is I've literally had a career that's always been about people. I've done personal training for like Division I athletes and, worked with classes that are 20 plus people of, CrossFitters and taught very complicated Olympic lifts to gymnastics to other things. And it's really, it's less about what's interesting about my career is I think it's less about even what necessarily is bringing us together, but just being with people and being for people and helping people gain confidence, whether that's spiritually or in the gym or, in this case, that they can make social change in their community. That's been something I've been very passionate about my whole life. And that's kind of continuing to come out even in this role. So. But once a CrossFitter, always a CrossFitter, if you ask me. I don't care what gravity has to say about it.
Hi, Commissioner. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Of course.
I was just curious about when you chose to, or you made the decision to run for commissioner. You said you were contacted by an organization.
Mhm.
Was that something that you had sort of signed up for, or how did they get your name? I
Very
guess?
interesting. We still kind of don't know the answer to that. I think me and Run for Something have talked about that, but I think I might have filled out like an online form at one point, like years ago, like maybe even back when I lived in Wisconsin, and I was just on a registry somewhere, and I don't know. It was, I knew of their organization, but I wasn't like super tied in. I think I probably filled something out for some, online giveaway or something, who knows? So it's wild. I still don't understand. And I do want to say, like, that started a discernment process for me that we even went days into the signature process where we weren't sure whether we were going to, like, my team that I had kind of assembled to help me discern. I still wasn't even sure if I was going to run. So I don't want to just simply say embrace new ideas. But I think not having a knee-jerk reaction to just say no to new things, or certainly if someone sees potential in you, to say no right out the gate. Because I think sometimes we think so little of ourselves. I certainly at that point didn't have any vision of myself in this role. And I think sometimes our visions for ourselves can expand if we're open to some new ideas. And so, yeah.